Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video I want to talk to you actually about the pose, not about this particular illustration. So I'm in the process of inking and doing one of Spawn here, but it's not about the characters. So what I wanted to show you though is kind of where I'm at in the process, but then kind of back step it here to the pose, take off this blue line layer. Okay, so I shared this pose on a couple things and it did pretty well. And that always tells me that, maybe people want to know more about a certain thing. And so then I got some questions and feedback from it. And it was like, one of the ones that I wanted to address today specifically was, I'll get the question, what do you use? Do you use like a stick figure approach? And I do. I think every pose really starts as a stick figure in a sense. But at the same time, what I find more helpful is more of a lightning bolt method. So what I'm going to do is show you what I mean by that by first taking down the opacity to this, scaling that back pretty light, and then I'm going to do, I'll do an example too, but what I want to show you is if I was to reverse analyze this, I guess, is that what I mean by the lightning bolt method is that, okay, if you were to think about it in terms of a stick figure, right, and I recommend you do this with artists that you admire. I generally will try to figure out placement of the spine, get a rib cage in there, and throw in some basic forms like this. You'll see people do this where they draw the floating underwear. Jim Lee does this one. That's where I think I picked that up at. And this works really well. Okay, so but I think you have to have a pretty good understanding of the body in general for the larger forms to work. Okay, so let me go back a step, do this again. So if you were to think about it as simplistic as possible, maybe you'd do something like this. This would be like that stick figure approach, right? Now this works, and again, I recommend you try anything and everything to see what works best for you. This does work. You want to think as simple as possible in the start so that you can express things as quickly as possible and make changes as quickly as possible. The only bad thing here is that the decisions you make early on will carry through to the end result. And so if you're too static and too stiff, which I feel like this method is going to definitely make your characters very stiff and rigid, again, that can carry through to the end. So what I prefer to do is again, this lightning bolt method. And what happens is I'm still going to place like the shoulders like this. I always do a V for the collarbones, right? And then the lightning bolt method to me is this: boom, boom, boom. Okay? And so what it's doing is it's resembling more the curvature and the flow of the anatomy. So over here it's going to be like this. Well, and actually it would, I actually made a mistake there. Sorry. Let me go back. It's actually this. This. All right, it looks more like a lightning bolt, right? So you're getting the shoulder curve. It goes back up, connects to the bicep. Back up, connects to the forearm muscles. Down to the wrist. Okay, so that's the lightning bolt method for the arm. Looks pretty wonky there, but that's what I do. And what happens is it really makes you think more about the anatomy, and also it makes you think more about the bend of portions of the extremities, arms and legs, because they're not just straight. If you draw you can draw all these leg muscles correctly, or rather quick. I'm sure people are looking at saying my anatomy's off. People always tend to say that, and it probably is. I'm sure it is. But the other thing about it is you can draw the anatomy relatively correctly, but if it's too straight up and down, you're going to get a very stiff, uninteresting leg. It can't be straight up and down. There has to be a curve and a bend there. And I think for comics, it's better to over accentuate that. And that's what I've been trying to do more. Somebody that comes to mind that does it really well would be like J. Scott Campbell. Lots of artists do it well, but his work, he does a lot of like, the arms and the limbs, and they all have bends and, exaggerated proportions and all that good stuff. But so back to this, if I take this now, and here I'm trying to think about the lightning bolt method, it's a little bit more like a forward bend of the leg here, and back and then back this way. Okay, it's harder to see from this angle. In fact, what I tend to think about here a little bit more is the bend going like this and like this. Okay, so this kind of outward bowing that you get, and really more of a forward bowing to the upper leg. I want the feeling that this leg here has a slight bend to it, but it's always also coming out towards us. You can't see that. It's kind of like foreshortening perspective. It's coming out towards us, but we have to think about it. And then also, again, like I mentioned, a bit of like a back bending to the bottom of the bottom portion of the leg. So from the side, it's more evident. So let me show you that. So from the side, it's more like this, and like this. Okay, that lightning bolt again. The upper leg muscles, and then the calf back here, and then this straightens out. Now the other thing about legs, and that's a poorly drawn leg, but hopefully you get my drift of the, again, the forward, the back, and opposing bends as far as, in a leg, it's actually like more curved on the front, straighter on the back, up here anyways, more curved on the back, straighter on the front. Okay, so there's this like back and forth rhythm. And that's really what the lightning bolt is, and what all of this is. It's looking for rhythms in the body, and then it becomes easier to draw this stuff. So for instance, like one that I like to do is you get the aces somewhere up here, and then you've got this curve that goes like this. It's actually an elongated S. Okay, you see that real stretched out S? And that's a really helpful curve to look at. So you got the, I believe it's sartorius right here. I'm not looking at anatomy terminology, but I think it's the sartorius there. And basically what happens is it goes down through here, it connects down to here, but I'm not even looking, I'm going past that, and I'm looking at a rhythm of the leg that goes like this. And then from there you can do this kind of little diamond-like shape for the inner calf. Remember that you're going to get areas that are shorter on one side or more abrupt, and more elongated on the other side. And again, that's another rhythm thing that you want to pay attention to in the body, and it makes drawing these poses a lot easier, and then it essentially allows you to check your work. Okay, so now let me do this, because I've explained what I see with that little lightning bolt method, and you really want to look for different patterns all throughout the body, and not just in the way that it applies to a realistic depiction, but rhythms and patterns that you see in your own work, that you like to see in your work, that you want to recreate, that gives you that consistency and that ability to draw distorted, imaginative work, but then rein it back in with the patterns and the things that you like to see in your work. So again, you're going to look for those. For me, there's different things. It's like I like this little W shape in the rib cage. I talk about that. I like to bring a bend backwards for the abdominal muscles and then kind of flow that around. I do this little shape like that right there for the obliques, kind of establish that little V right there for the way the lat intersects. All these things are just little patterns that I've memorized that, again, I like to see in my own work. Obviously, if you look at this, that doesn't look like a real body, but I'm okay with that. I like stylized and dynamic versions of that. So now let me go ahead and create one for you from scratch, and I'll do a little bit different posing just to show you how this stuff can kind of work for you after you, again, have a bit of understanding about it. Okay, so like most people will tell you with figure drawing, it's good to start with an overall action line. So let's do that first. Let's have we'll say a spine of our character that's really bent like this. Okay, so that's essentially our action line, and really your action line can go right through the entire body. So it could be like, this could be the spine, but you could have the back leg really hyperextended. So you could, it's kind of a weird action line. It's kind of two, but I think about the upper torso and the leg independently, so you'll get a lot of people when they're doing figure drawing, they do one big flowing, sweeping line through the body. We'll say something like this. And then you would attach, say the upper torso and the pelvis, okay? And you can use this bean-like shape. We'll see a lot of people do that, okay? So that just gives you an initial flow. Again, when I start to attach the limbs, I'm going to think a little bit more like a lightning bolt I don't know that I'll see it here so much, but I want to get some nice bend to the, the upper leg and the lower leg. I want to get a bend there. And this is where the foot would attach, something like that. And for this leg, I'm going to bring this way back, and this is where we'll see that lightning bolt. Okay. Move this around a little bit. Okay, so something like that. And my lengths are a little bit off, and so this is really the stage of the work where you're trying to get the lengths roughly in the place they need to be, things like that, but not exact, especially digital, because I got a lot of options to be able to maneuver here. I'm going to bring the head back to here. I'm going to bring one arm up, one arm down, a V for the collarbones, okay? And then I'm going to bring this arm up and over like this, and I'm going to attach a fist. That's a fist, simple as that. And now again, for the lightning bolt, for thinking about the anatomy, it's going to be a little bit like, it's hard to read from this side because again, different angles, it's not going to apply so well, but you'll see it better here. So lightning bolt, we got the shoulder, the bicep area. I want to bring this arm forward, so it does get a little bit misconstrued here, but I'm going to bring that arm, I don't like it there. Let me try something else. So let me establish the length and the concept first. Let me bring it this way and then back out towards us. Okay, so I'll attach the fist right there. And in which case that is more that stick figure, but I want to still think about that lightning bolt kind of method as well. Shoulder, bicep, and then it disappears right there. So in this pose, it doesn't get used as much, right? You just see it more here, but I still think about it. Okay, I still think it's important to imagine it, even though I'm not using it as much right there. Different poses obviously aren't going to use it as much. So I'm going to bring the rib cage out like this, midsection. Here's the pelvis. This leg's closer to us is what I'm imagining. Remember too that you want to try to have different orientations for the head, upper torso, or upper torso, I guess all this is the torso, right? So it sounds weird, but upper torso, pelvis, whatever, lower torso. So leg right here, lower leg, knee, we can just throw that in with an angle. Leg over here, or upper leg. Notice too that I'm using what looks like similar to cylinder shapes, but I'm already shaping it in a way that's a little more organic and flowing. So I'm almost jumping to the anatomy instead of going right to cylinders. So that's going to take time for you maybe. It depends on where you're at. If you like that, I kind of have shapes in my mind that I use for these portions of the body, just so I don't have to put the cylinders in, go back through and draw over it another time. So I just go to these shapes that I kind of have acquired through practice. But if you're more of a beginner, you're going to use more cylinders, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just remember, there's no right or wrong way to do any of this. Okay, I want to always stress that. I get really bent out of shape when I see people say the right way and then the wrong way. It's like, no, not. I mean, have you looked at art ever? It's like there's no right and wrong. There's just lots of different ways to do the same thing. What the right way is what works for you, basically. So again, just getting in some of these forms. I want this to be a female character. So I'll start with the ovals for the breast, but then I want these to be more like teardrop shapes. Make sure to not leave them as big circles. And the rib cage, I'm going to move that line down a little bit more. So just like that, I'm starting to get a pose going. A bit kind of weird, but we kind of start here. And then what I like to do digitally is duplicate it, soft erase it. So I very rarely get a pose the way I like it on the first try. I mean, sometimes I'm lucky enough to do that, but I'm not even going to say that. I'm never lucky enough to do that because I'm always going to edit it in some way. It's not like I can draw without erasing, right? So, but what I'll do here is I'll jump in and I'll say, okay, what do I like? What's really odd about this? I feel like the shoulders are too broad. I feel like the head direction isn't as interesting as it could be. So I could probably start there. I think it's a good idea at this stage of the work too to still try to keep things a little bit loose. Basically, the way I look at it is I want to keep it loose until I'm sure of what I'm wanting to see. So if I tense up too soon and I start trying to refine this, but I'm not done with the posing, then that's a mistake. Even though, like I said, no right or wrong. I am contradicting myself as I tend to do in these videos. You're welcome. Okay, so, but yeah, I want to keep this loose because I'm trying to figure this out. And like, here's something I can already feel is a little bit awkward of a posing in a position. So I need to mess with that a bit. Maybe I'll bring the hand up a little bit like this. See if that helps correct it. A little, still kind of weird, but a lot of times I will glance over the weirdness and get some of the other things working. I feel like if I can get a good amount of the rest of the pose working, then maybe I can come back and fix something. I always look at this like one thing hinges and affects the other. So for me, I'm trying to get a lot of the major things working right. And if you can check those big boxes, then the little boxes become easier, I think. I think it works the same way for like faces. Like if you can get certain aspects of a face working well, the main parts, eyes, mouth, head shape, things like that, then it becomes easier to fix the other things. But there's certain things you just can't have wrong. You can't have the eyes looking all weird, and especially in a close-up, right? So there's certain things that are more important to get really right. And other things you can kind of hide in an effect or a shadow and things like that. But so like these legs are a bit weird. Is it salvageable? I don't know. We'll find out shortly. So at this stage, I can do a little bit more with, the anatomy and organic flowing lines. Keep in mind too, like one thing I immediately see is this upper leg feels short, especially for, I like overly long legs on women for my characters. So I measure from the collarbone here down to the bottom of the pelvis. So if I take that distance and I bring it over to here, I feel like that leg is now too short. Okay, so that's my kind of my gauge for that. Now digital, this is going to make traditional artists usually pretty mad, but sorry, just got to save time. It is a video. I can just easily distort that and kind of get that where I need it to go somewhat. Remember, I want that forward, forward back bend thing going on. And remember what I talked about with that relationship of that S curve. You can see it even through here. It's tilted away from us, the part that I would normally illustrate for that. But I still think about it. So again, these relationships and these rhythms of the body aren't always right in your face at the right angle. They're still there though, and they're still worth thinking about. I just spit on the screen. That's so gross. I have a little bit of a lisp, folks. Okay, so right here, people watching the channel like, dude, Rob, we've watched tons of your videos. We know you have a lisp. Everybody knows you have a lisp. Okay, so something like this. Something like this. I immediately say stuff that brings out my lisp. Okay, so this foot, something like that. I don't know. That could probably go down further. We can hyperextend her foot, right? She's not going to mind. Yeah, and on it goes. Okay, so not the most elegant pose, not the best pose, but it's a pose. And again, I just wanted to give you an example of how I would work through it. And it doesn't really stop here by any means. I just keep adding little bits and pieces, like how much of the anatomy do I want to see? Is she uh, what type of hero is she? Is she a She-Hulk? Is she somebody less defined? Does she have a cape? And you go on and on. But this is basically how I work through it. And again, I think it's really important that you use those methods where you do use the stick figure method for like the lengths of the limbs and things like that. You use the basic shapes of like the rib cage and the floating underwear like Jim Lee does. You do all that for getting those forms kind of started. But then for me, I really like that lightning bolt method. Again, it's a little bit more like this right there, something like that. But it's very important. I think that it really helps you not have these stiff limbs. Um, that I tend to get. Like I still feel like the curvature, the legs a bit weird here. Both legs are a bit weird. But I keep working on those. But I think they're close enough where I can fix them. In fact, I think that if I was to take, this is all explorative, okay? It's stuff that you're just going to constantly be nudging and moving around and trying to make better and better and better. And then sometimes you just have to let it go. You gotta say, okay, this is good enough, close enough. I'm gonna render it. I'm gonna make it the best I can in the next stage of the work now, because you also can't hinder yourself from production, from actually completing stuff. So be aware of that, because I don't want you to put too much stress and pressure on yourself to get this amazing pose every time. It's not going to happen every time, but you can get closer and closer. You can learn the forms and the repetitive rhythms of the body that make it easier for you, and you can get to where you need to be. And then you put all your icing on the cake and make it all pretty, and then go from there. So again, completion is important. Make sure you do that. Thanks very much for tuning in and watching today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. More content on the way very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.